The most frequently asked question you'll get from people who just got into the Yakuza series will most likely be one of the following. Which game do I start the series with? Or which game is the best one? And these are valid questions. A number of people have made great videos about the best starting point for new players, yet when you look at a general opinion regarding the quote-unquote best game, you'll find that nearly every title, including the spin-offs, has an incredibly passionate backing. Hell, that's one of the reasons why I made the Hanya's Advocate series to talk about these different opinions. Theoretically, I could have made another tier list video to address this particular topic, like a number of Yakuza fans already have. But instead, I thought it would be more interesting to see what the critics thought was the best entry in the series. Naturally, I will disagree with a number of these takes, but I thought it would be fun to discuss regardless. Now, here are some ground rules before we get started. Number 1. We'll be using the scores from Metacritic as the main criteria in the ranking. I've considered using Famitsu for the ranking at first, but all of the Yakuza games have scored between 34 and 39 points out of 40. Which would mean that most of the games would be sharing placements in the final ranking. So instead, we'll be going with the Metacritic average between every console iteration of a given title. For example, with Yakuza 6, we will use the average scores of the PlayStation 4, PC, and Xbox One release of the game. Rule number 2. Japan exclusive releases will not be included. While this is unfortunate, as some of the best games in the series are exclusive to Japan, Metacritic simply doesn't include those particular entries in their review system. This also means that, for example, the PlayStation 3 versions of Yakuza 1 and 2 won't be included in the final calculations either. And finally, to properly date this video, the latest release in the Like a Dragon franchise, at the time of this recording, is 2021's Lost Judgment. So if you come across this video several months or years after its release, this will give you the proper context as to why certain games or versions of the games may be missing. This ranking will include 14 different Yakuza games. So we'll start from the bottom and slowly make our way up. Okay, let's begin. In last place, with a 64 out of 100 average score, is Yakuza Dead Souls. Not really surprising. While I'd personally love to play the game even today, it was plagued by a number of issues like the poor frame rate, and the fact that most of the people unfortunately wrote it off as just another cash grab, like the other zombie spin-offs in the industry at the time. There are certainly games that I'd rank far below this particular title, as it still ticks a lot of boxes for a fun Yakuza game, but for now, this remains the least liked game by the critics. In 13th place, with a score of 72, we have Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise. Some people might not classify this as a Yakuza game at all, but with the Japanese namesake and emphasis on beat-em-up meeting RPG elements, it still fits the label perfectly, so we will include it on this list. As for the placement, it is in a bit of a weird spot. Even I haven't played it yet, since I haven't read the original manga it's based off, but it still feels like a cool game, despite its grindy nature for completionists. Maybe it's the fact that the manga is so old with no recent anime adaptations that resulted in the lessened interest. Again, many people, including critics, just wrote it off as okay. Not a really bad game, but not outstanding either. In 12th place, with 75 points, we have the original Yakuza for the PlayStation 2. This is something that I highly disagree with personally. The game was phenomenal, especially as a start for a brand new series. That aside, you do need to keep in mind that the version that was reviewed featured the infamous English dub, and inconsistent load times between scene switches. Considering the scope of the game and the busy development history, I think it deserved much higher grades, but we had no idea just how far this series would go from that point on, so I'll let this placement be for now. In 11th place, with 77 points, there is Yakuza 2, once again for the PS2. Definitely something that most of the community will disagree with, especially with how beloved a character like Ryuji is to this day. Mechanically, it's a straight-up improvement over 1, while the story is a lot more ambitious. Still, for there to only be a 2-point difference between these two PlayStation 2 games still feels a bit jarring. Maybe this will make more sense when we see the final rankings, but who the hell knows. Alright, just cracking the top 10 with an average of 80.33, we have Yakuza Kiwami. Really interesting placement. Maybe critics just didn't like the story of the original game, which is kind of understandable since it could be all over the place at times. But again, this was their first attempt at writing this kind of narrative. Alternatively, maybe the critics were put off by the number of similarities with Yakuza 0, or the general reuse of assets. But again, considering that this was a low-budget project that was sold at a significantly below average price in the West, when you take everything into account, I think it all evens out in the end. Anyway, let's move on. In 9th place, with an average of 80.84, we have Yakuza 4. I feel like this is a fair placement, cause this particular title is the most average Yakuza game we have. Nothing exceptionally bad nor outstandingly amazing about it. It's just a cool action game, honestly. Granted, it did introduce us to the wonders of Akiyama, the legendary Mr. Not Important, and the forgotten hero of Little Asia, so there are some great points about it as well. More than anything, it's just a testament to how this series just keeps getting bigger and better. Though I do find it funny how this particular game is just barely above Yakuza Kiwami in the average grades. Alright, spot number 8. With 81.34, geez, these grades are getting weird, we have Yakuza 3. For being the first mainline in 3D, being infamously plagued by a lot of cut content from the Japanese release, and featuring interesting AI behavior, this is an alright spot. I'd personally put it higher, but I'll leave my thoughts on that for the inevitable games tier list somewhere down the line. With all that said, this is an incredibly important game and a strong positive trajectory for the franchise as a whole. Spot number 7, with 82.25 is, strangely enough, Lost Judgment. Okay, this boggles my mind honestly, as I've yet to hear anyone speak poorly about this game. It has significantly improved gameplay, the story is really strong, the soundtrack is absolutely gorgeous. I would have thought it would be in the top 3, especially with the precedent the series set in the West after the release of Yakuza 0. I guess it's the fact that it's a sequel of a spin-off with no number tied to it, so a lot of people may have just started off with this title and gotten very confused, but you know, who the hell knows. Let's see what's on spot number 6. In spot number 6, with 83 points, the original Judgment. Okay, I guess they just don't like the spin-offs that much. I can definitely see why people would say that this feels too much like Yakuza or something along those lines, but I still heavily disagree with this placing. This game has one of the strongest narratives to date, vastly improved gameplay on the Dragon Engine. I can make a whole video on why this entry is one of the best games ever made, but again, different story for a different time, so let's just move on. Spot number 5. Okay, I love this. Spot number 5 is Yakuza 5 with 83.34 points. I appreciate the brand consistency right here, 5 being 5th. Definitely strong contender for the favorite game among fans, but I can imagine critics being fed up with the scope of the game, since they usually tend to skim through them to be the first to publish the reviews. And that type of attitude really doesn't do these games any favors, especially Yakuza 5, which is just on a completely different level with its choices for structure, pacing, and everything in between. At least it's in the top 5, so hey, we're making progress, I guess. Spot number 4, with 84 points, is Yakuza 6. I get it. It was considered a farewell to Kiryu, it was in a brand new engine, a short and concise story. People may criticize it today for the technological improvements we've seen in the subsequent releases, but I still think that this is a phenomenal game definitely worthy of the placement. Not much else to add here really. Now, here's the weird thing. Spot number 2 and spot number 3 are occupied by 2 games with an equal score. The games in question, with an average of 85 points, are Yakuza 7 and Yakuza Kiwami 2. I understand Yakuza 7 being this high up, considering how well it tackled the many things it had going up against it prior to its release. Remember the hate that it garnered from some fans? Well, I do. It was just as bad as the time when the DMC reboot was announced and the community exploded in rage. But Yakuza 7 crushed any criticism it initially drew and is a wonderful new beginning for the series. So this is an understandable placement. As for Kiwami 2, I couldn't disagree more with this placement. Most of that comes from the fact that this game, at least to me, presents the biggest missed opportunity in this franchise, as it doesn't feel like an adequate remake of 2, but more so like it tries so hard to mechanically surpass 6 that that's the only thing that it cares for. Again, story for a different time, But many people list this game as one of their favorites despite all of what I just said. And it is a great title when observed on its own, so yeah. To cap the list off, with a whopping 87 out of 100, we have Yakuza 0. Is anyone surprised? I mean, really? This game single-handedly resurrected the series in the West. It led to the reintegration of English dubs in the series. We even started getting simultaneous releases globally, because this game was so well received critically and commercially. The series really needed this success. It needed to make a monolithic impact, and dear God did it. Yakuza 0 is a title worthy of all the praise that it got, whether it be as a standalone title or the perfect love letter to the titles that preceded it. Honestly, it's a wonder that critics felt the same way, and how it birthed such a bizarre meme culture amidst the lockdowns of yesteryear. But nowadays we all treat that as if that's been the status quo from the get-go, with all the reaction memes, Kiryu-chans and dame-dames that came from it. And you know what? Maybe that's for the best. Because beneath this meme surface lies one of the best communities I've had the pleasure of contributing towards. I wouldn't change it for the world. So, there you have it. As it stands, these are the final rankings according to Metacritic. I know for a fact that many people will disagree with the end results, so by all means, share your own thoughts in the comments, though I'd implore you to remain civil while discussing it. Critics in general are a hot topic in the gaming community, and for good reason. But the community behind Like a Dragon has proven itself as mature in their discourse on numerous occasions, or at the very least, they'd strive to improve themselves after making any potential missteps. That's why I love it. So, thank you for watching this brief video, and I hope you enjoyed your time here. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and have a great day. Cheers!